I'm back in the Netherlands. I'm back home from my trip in Reykjavik, where I played the Reykjavik Open, and we still have to talk about the last couple of games. So without further ado, let's get right into round 8. Because in round 8, this game was just something else. We need to talk about this. So in round 8, I faced Dhruv Rattan from India, an 1800 rated player. When I saw this pairing, I was a little bit disappointed because I was really looking forward to play a higher rated player after winning my last game against 1900, but I got a little bit unlucky with the pairing, so that was a little unfortunate. But yeah, we go next, right? So let's take a look what happened in the game. E4. My opponent plays e4, and I was really excited because I get to play the French again. Yay! e6, d4, d5, and my opponent went for e5. And yeah, I was thinking, so we may see a repetition of what happened a few rounds ago. Remember when I got into a terrible position against the GM? Yeah, that was something. I double checked the lines, of course. I made sure that I knew what to do and everything. So yeah, I was sort of expecting this in any case. I played c5, c3, queen b6, knight of 3, bishop d7. The idea to place the bishop on b5 to try to trade off the light squared bishop, because our bishop is oftentimes not the greatest in this pawn structure, and we want to trade it off in most cases. I mean, sometimes it can be a magical piece. I try to convince people of this, but we'll get there. Anyway, bishop e2. My opponent plays bishop e2. I play bishop b5, takes, and this is the exact same position as I played in my previous game in the French when I played the Grandmaster. There, I went queen a6, which is a terrible move, and I learned a few moves after I played this in that game. I learned that I have to play something else, and that move is exactly what I played in the game. Queen d7, and I was so happy that I, played this instantly. Anyway, knight c2, my opponent played, and I was a little bit lost, I have to say, what to do. I played knight c6, short castle, knight g7. I was not really sure what the exact move order was, because I remember preparing instead of knight c2, something like d takes c5, bishop takes c5, etc. B4, bishop b6. I remember seeing such lines, and then this knight goes to c6, let's say, then this knight goes all the way to g6, and there's pressure on the e5 pawn. But I didn't really quite remember what I was supposed to do after knight c2. That was quite new to me. It makes so much sense just putting the knight back to c2. I guess I remember some of the lines where the pieces go, but the way that my opponent played was really interesting because I played knight c6, a simple developing move, and here I got a little bit stuck because I want to take on d4 now, but at the same time I don't want to release the tension in the center so quickly. I was thinking of playing rook c8, but I thought I need to develop my king side, so my knight and bishop over here need to be developed, but how? This bishop is not getting out yet. If I move my knight to e7, then my bishop is cut off, and of course I don't want to play knight h6, so I was a little bit stuck here, what to do, where to develop. Apparently c takes e4 is one of the main moves, and rook c8 is also just fine, but I played knight ge7 with the idea that I'll just try to wait and see what my opponent does. And my opponent went for bishop d2. Turns out that d takes c5 was perfectly fine. I really thought it was fine for me as well because knight g6 and I attacked the pawn on e5 and I win the pawn back. But turns out that the computer is completely displeased with this for black. But my opponent went for bishop d2. And it makes sense because now I start to realize, okay, it looks a little bit strange, but I understand that my opponent wants to play b4. And I was like, I don't really like where this is going. It feels like my opponent has really easy play, and I'm just a little bit stuck in trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do, and I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. So knight g6 is what I played, and after h4 I quickly regretted it because I thought, yeah, well, my knight is a little bit useless now, unless I play h5. So I played h5. I felt the need to play h5, otherwise my knight has to retreat if white gets to play h5 themselves. And by playing h5, I do allow knight g5 or bishop g5 at some point, so it's a little bit tricky. After g3, the pawn h4 is defended one more time, and here I thought I have to do something here. I don't see where the play is here. And I thought one of the main ideas in the French, f6. So I did it. E takes f6, g takes f6, and it looks a little bit strange over here, but I thought that my opponent doesn't really have good piece coordination. This bishop is a little strange on d2. The knight is not really in the game yet, and this knight on f3 is actually dominated by this pawn on f6 over here, this one. So I really like my position in a way. It's a little strange, but I think it works in some way. So my opponent plays b4, I play c4, I want to shut down the queen side whatsoever, b5, knight c7. If I go long castle, my king should be safe there. Rook e1, knight f5, queen e2, and here I went king f7. I decided to go for the delayed bomb cloud. Well, I have to, because otherwise how do I defend the pawn? It's a little bit awkward otherwise. But I thought it was a perfect setup for me. a4 and bishop d6 and knight e3. And here I'm like, I know I have a good position, but how do you proceed here? How do you actually continue? Because my pieces are perfectly placed, especially rook ag8, and all the pieces are basically doing something. Okay, maybe the rook on h8 is not doing much, but I feel like it's protecting the pawn on h5, so it's at least doing something good, because that pawn can become a weakness. But after knight g2, it becomes really difficult to see how I can actually proceed. Because if I play e5 really quickly, then my king gets very exposed, and that may cause trouble for me. And I really want to sacrifice on g3, but that is also not really sufficient, it seems like, because all my opponent's pieces are defending the king very well. So I was a little bit stuck here what to do exactly. So I went back with a knight to sort of release my queen. Let's say if I want to play queen c7, then e6 is defended still by the knight, right? So that's why I wanted to make sure that, yeah, I don't see where this knight is going now, so I thought I'll retreat it and then release the queen so it can kind of help with the attack somehow. So bishop f4, I did expect this because as I move my knight from g6, I'm not defending that square anymore. Bishop takes, knight takes, and here queen d6. I was okay with the bishop trade. I mean, I didn't really see any other possibility for me, despite my bishop being the better bishop. I didn't really know what was better to do there. King h2, my opponent steps out of that pin on the g file, of course, because it is pretty scary. But this allowed me to play rook g4, queen d2, and so here I played rook g8. Apparently it was possible here to take, which is just crazy. Like, it was going through my mind a lot during the game that some sort of sacrifice must have been good. It should, like, some of those that I didn't do, it should have been good, but it's really hard to get to the point that you actually do it. But it turns out that, let's say after a queen trade, pawn takes, then you get to play knight g6, and then your knight gets to f4 because you can't defend the pawn on f4, and the knights are simply dominating. But it's really difficult to do this, especially when you're playing a low-rated opponent. You kind of want to keep the same material balance, especially when you are in a better position. And I felt like because I had a better position, I don't need to go for such risk. I don't want to trade pieces. I want to keep the piece on the board and just start taking pieces, like winning material, I mean. So anyway, rook g8 is what I played. I just tried to take it easy. Rook g1, and I went here for knight g6. I want to get rid of that knight because it's just blocking everything now. So takes, king h1, because of course I was threatening knight takes h4 again. Another pin on that king. Poor king. So the king moved away, and here I thought, okay, I have to start putting pressure and gain some more space. Even though after d takes f takes e5, there are moves such as knight g5 check available, but I thought it was perfectly fine, and my king is safe over here. I have control of the center, and my pieces should be fine, but I'm a little concerned about the rook on g4, because after knight h2, I played rook e2, rook e4, I mean. Turns out that d4 is a better move, which is completely crazy to me because I just didn't really consider this. I mean, why would I give away my rook, right? But apparently the computer is really happy with this, so that is completely insane. But I thought just move the rook away. Although I do have to say I did see f3, rook e3, and if g4, rook d3. But I was a little concerned after, let's say, queen f2, the queen moves away, and Yeah, it looks a little bit awkward. My rook is not really doing anything anymore on d3. My knight has to leave. The pawn on h4 is defended by the queen. So yeah, I really felt like my opponent was getting the initiative here even. So yeah, it was a little bit concerning. We were both a little bit low on the clock. I had 17 minutes here, my opponent 3 minutes. So I was also a little bit playing on the clock here because I thought I should use that to my advantage. And try to play, you know, like sort of intuitively, because I should try to trust my intuition and kind of see if where my opponent makes a mistake at some point. But okay, my opponent went for knight f3 instead, so that was a bit of a relief. King g7, and here queen c2, and here I play queen f6, because obviously the threat was to play knight g5, my rook will be under attack, and if the rook moves, if it can even move, yeah, it can go to g4, then my knight on f5 will be hanging. So that's the issue. So I played queen f6 to defend my knight. Knight g5 was played anyway. Here I went for rook g4, king h2, and here I was so happy. With 10 minutes on the clock, I played knight takes h4 almost instantly. Brilliant move. I was so happy because this is the moment that I thought I'm winning. Like, it's over. Within like 5 moves, this game is over. I was so happy. My opponent's down to 40 seconds on the clock. What can go wrong, right? So my opponent takes. And in this position, I'm calculating a few lines. I have 10 minutes. I'm like, let's take your time, Anna. So I calculate moves such as queen f4, rook takes h4, rook takes g5, and I'm trying to figure out what is the best way to proceed. And in all of those lines, what I missed, so let's say after queen f4 check, for whatever reason, it never crossed my mind that this may be a move. Or maybe it crossed my mind here. I cannot recall it 100% for sure, but what I do remember is that, let's say rook takes, knight h3, queen f4, rook g3 just did not cross my mind. I thought after queen f4 is checkmate on the next move because king h1 and rook takes h3. I thought that's it. But turns out that, let's say rook takes h4 is a bad move. And the reason why is because of this rook g3 move after queen f4. So let's say I would have played, so the difference is if you play queen f4 first, what happens there? If you play rook g3 now, then you take on g5. You can take with both rooks basically, but the main idea is that after h takes g5, you have h4. And you're picking up the rook, you will be up material, you will be up some pawns, and you have the biggest initiative ever. You're the one that is controlling the position, and you're going to win very soon with black. But I didn't realize that this was so important, because had I realized that rook g3 is like a very important move to look out for, I would have seen that I need to square h4 for my pawn. And if we go back to what actually happened in the game, there was a rook on h4. So after knight h3, I played rook g4 because I realized, wait a second, if I play queen f4, there's rook g3, and that's it. End of line. I don't have h4. I don't have anything I can do here. This is just losing. I'm just down a piece. And I was like, I cannot believe this. I could not believe that this was happening. Like, I had 10 minutes on my clock. My opponent is under 1 minute, and I'm the one just completely throwing away a winning position. I cannot believe it. So I played rook g4 because I thought I try to keep it safe. My opponent cannot take that rook, of course, because the knight is still pinned. So then I would be winning the piece back. So yeah, I realized my mistake. Well, I didn't know for sure what I did wrong, like what was the winning move instead. But I did realize I messed up. But I thought, at least I have 2 pawns for the piece, so it's not the end of the world. But I certainly did not like my position at all. Rook g3, very strong move by my opponent, because now I am threatening to take on h3, right? So that is the threat, king takes, and then checkmate on h4. So my opponent plays rook g3 to defend the knight, so very strong move. And I play d4. I'm like sort of freaking out deep inside. I don't know what to do, so I'm just putting pressure on this other side of the board to see what can happen here. Rook g1, d3. So I created a protected pass pawn. Who knows where this can, be useful for. queen e2, queen f4. It is quite insane that my queen cannot be captured by the knight, at least. That like this rook is pinned as well. It's like so many pins going on in this position, like a really insane position. And of course, after queen takes f4, I was really happy about this because e takes f4, and I thought like this is a really nice position for me. Okay, rook g3, rook g3 g2, rook 3 g2. That's a crazy one. Is what is supposed to be played by white. But yeah, it doesn't really feel like white can make progress, but apparently the computer is really happy about this. I thought it was completely fine for me, but okay. We were both in like big time trouble already. Like we were both down to a minute. This was move 40. Queen e3 is what my opponent played, and I played move b6. So here I allowed the move queen takes f4, but my opponent went for king g2 instead. And here I took on g3. I'm not sure what's going on in these moves. This is move 41, and we still make terrible moves. But idea is simple. I didn't want to keep the queens on the board. I didn't feel like I could make any progress with the queens on the board, and I thought I had to test my luck in the endgame. I really thought that there's like some sort of fortress happening with the queens on the board, and if anything, my king is a weaker one over here, and with white having more pieces to attack me, I thought I was the one that could be in trouble after keeping the queens on the board. So that's why I was really happy to trade. I spent a long time on deciding whether I should take here on e3 first or here on g3 first, but I knew that I want to keep that pawn here if anything, and not here because that would stop my potential passed pawn. So that's why I decided to take on g3, queen takes, f takes g3, and here rook e4. I was so desperate here that I even considered rook d4, but unfortunately it doesn't work because there's like moves like knight f2, and you just stop my pawns at some point. The pawns are not going far. I was a bit disappointed there. So yeah, it was a nice try in my head. I was really like feeling it, but it's not going to work out. Rook e4 is what I played instead. King f3, rook e2, knight f2, king g6, g4. And I thought, okay, I also want to have another passed pawn. Even though I may lose that pawn, maybe I can cause some distraction somewhere. And my opponent played here g5, which is a mistake, a big one, apparently. The only move that is winning here is rook h1, simply because you're picking up the pawn. And let's say if I play king g5, then you can give a check here, and yeah, I have to go back and lose a pawn. So that's why rook h1 was really important. But my opponent luckily didn't play it. I mean, it's a pretty difficult situation, right? It's pretty common that you want to push the pawn as far as possible so that you get the better chances. But in this situation, I play h3, and what is going on here is that if my opponent takes that pawn, I play e4, and suddenly it gets really tricky. Well, I do have to say that I'm still lost here, funnily enough, just because the knight is coming to f4, then g6, and then like that pawn is moving places real fast. So anyway, knight e4 is what my opponent played. h2 is what I played, rook h1, rook c2. And this is the moment that my opponent offered a draw. This is an equal position. We're just moving the rook and king left and right. So like I would give a check. My opponent goes back. I play rook c2, blah, blah, blah. It's a draw. My opponent cannot make progress. If my opponent tries to make progress, then maybe I would win with d2 because that pawn is moving forward. Rook c1 is the threat, and I would be promoting basically on the next move. So my opponent cannot try to make any progress here. The knight is stuck. The rook is stuck. But I thought, this is the position where my opponent offered a draw. I thought, I don't want to draw. For me, it's either winning or losing. There's nothing in between. And I need to test my opponent until the very last moment. If it means that I have to go to 2 barrack kings, that's it, you know? I mean, that was kind of the attitude I had. I really did not want to draw or even lose this game, but I didn't want to draw, basically. So I went for a check, and then I went back to a2 and king e3, and here I decided to take the pawn, which was a terrible idea. Rook takes h2, rook a1, rook h6, king g7, and here, fortunately enough, my opponent made a mistake. My opponent went for rook c6, and the winning idea is to simply play knight d2 and start picking up the pawns. And after, let's say, a check, you can play king of 3 and you're fine. Next move, knight takes c4, and my pawns are just slowly disappearing, slowly. So I'm also kind of running out of moves here. As you can see, I have to move my rook or like my king. It's just all awkward. If rook e2, you can just take, and if e4, we're not afraid of this because king f4, and yeah, I'm not really making progress. The rook can always support, if anything, to stop the pawns, right? So that's why knight e2 is really important to play. I feel like that's one of the easiest ways to convert. Not that I was like seeing these moves during the game, because I was really focused on trying to win here and not trying to lose. Anyway, rook c6, my opponent played. Now the rook e1 check, king f3, rook f1, king e3, rook e1. I was really hoping that my opponent would play king g2, because that would mean that I could possibly win, because rook e1, and my opponent may think, oh, rook takes c4, I'm going to win this because I captured the pawn, and after rook takes e4, I would be winning actually, because rook takes e4, d2, and my pawn is unstoppable. So I was really hopeful there, like maybe my opponent makes a mistake like this, I don't know, like you're trying to drag it out all the way until the very end and hope for the best. But my opponent played so well, plays king e3, and we agreed to a draw. I was like, yeah, I really wanted to continue to two bare kings, but if I do that at this point, it was at this point that I realized I will be losing for sure if I continue. So I had to, you know, agree to the draw basically, and I really didn't want to, but I really had no choice. I can't just be playing and continuing like this, you know, anymore. So yeah, it was really funny that my community was like asking, why did you not accept the draw? I was just so not ready to accept any other result than a win. But no, credits to my opponent. My opponent played so well. Fully deserves a draw. Probably deserves even to win, honestly. But yeah, I'm just a little bit upset at myself for not being very precise at the moment that I could strike. This move, queen f4, remember in the middle game, was really important to play first. And that was a winning tactic. It sort of reminds me of Puzzle Rush, where two moves look really good and one move is like the instant move you play, but that's the wrong move, and it's such a tilter when you play that move and it was instead the other move. This is very relatable, but it wasn't actually in a real game, and that's probably even worse. But lesson learned. I should be much more careful. I thought I was being careful, like I was really focusing a lot and like trying to put everything that I had into the game, but yeah, I just had like a blind spot or something. I'm not sure what happened. So yeah, it was a really fun game though. It was really exciting, and yeah, I guess draw is a fair result for both of us. So yeah, that is what happened in this game. Round 9, we will see that in the next video, the recap of round 9. And I'm also thinking to do some sort of summary of my tournament, what I learned, what I did wrong, what I did well, etc. So let me know down below in the comments what you would like to see in terms of like a recap of the whole tournament. Would you be interested in this? What would you love to hear? Maybe some behind the scenes stuff. Let me know down below in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts, and maybe we can make it into a video somehow. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you liked the video. I hope you liked the recap. It's a little bit longer because the game was also pretty long and pretty complex. So I hope you guys don't mind it, but yeah, I appreciate you guys for watching. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the support, by the way. I will clarify this in my last recap of the tournament, but for now, thank you so much to all of you guys for the support, and I'll see you guys in the next video.